I had to make a choice that like nobody was going to save me. Nobody was like, people know, or at least I thought, what was going on, and they were okay with it. And so, I just had to make this decision for myself that I was going to find a way. I was going to find a way to get out of this myself.
Welcome to the SGV Master Key, a show where you will hear personal stories of triumph over failures and how others successfully navigated the unique landscape that is the San Gabriel Valley. What makes us different? Well, just like you, we have chosen the San Gabriel Valley for our home or businesses or both. We believe it is the people and small businesses that make this community great, and we love to share their stories with you. We always encourage your questions and feedback, and you can find all of our contact information at sgvmasterkey.com. Here are the hosts for the show, Russell Mano and Scott Warmoth.
All right, thanks for tuning in to another episode. Well, here we are again, Scott. What is this? Mid-January. Still dealing with COVID protocols. We're still in the midst of a pandemic. And this is our, I think, 20th episode.
Oh, have we hit 20?
Yeah.
Well, that's great to know.
No, actually, maybe more, but
it's been a great experience for me to do this show. We've had interesting guests from day one. Every guest has been a VIP and very, not just knowledgeable in their areas of practice or doing the things that they do, but very well spoken in bringing it out and getting it through to us, just what they do and what's important to them. And I've learned a lot from every guest.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I learned a lot about you. In watching you engage in the guests and the topics and things that you're knowledgeable about or interested in. And it's interesting how the show reveals those things.
Yeah. Well, it was a very, very satisfying experience to go through my 3 episodes, which we've just completed. And I guess that's probably why we hit 20. So, because I took up 3 of them. I didn't realize that. But today we're going to delve a little bit, or a lot, as much as we can, into you and bring out what you are to our listeners. And this will be a very, not just revealing, but very, educational and informative time to hear the things that you have to say. One of the good things about our show, and one of the reasons our guests are so good at speaking and communicating, is that you ask them very good questions. And I've really been impressed by your ability to really ask a salient question at the appropriate time. And I know that from our personal experience, having known you for 8 years, that you know how to ask the question that will bring information. And you've done that on the show. And so now it's going to be my turn to try to bring that out from you. I maybe give a little introduction as to how I met you. And I believe it was about 8 years ago. And I was training with a trainer. At that time, I was at LA Fitness, and I took regular training with a private trainer. And I was having a special problem with my shoulder. And my trainer, we were working out, and we were just having a problem trying to figure out what was wrong with my shoulder. And you happened to have been at LA or LA Fitness that night, and I could see my trainer saw you and looked at you as somewhat as a mentor, someone he respected, and he said, "Let's ask Russell," and so we went over, and you were just working out on your own, and we went over, and he explained to you what I had been experiencing, and you, very humbly, but quite accurately, kind of described what the problem was and how to try to fix it, and it did work, as I recall. So that's how I met you, and I've learned since then that in talking with you, that you will never say something that you haven't really thought through very clearly. So you won't. You're not the type just to speak to get a reaction. You won't speak unless you've really thought through and really know what you're saying and really mean what you're saying. So that's an unusual or uncommon trait, but it's a very positive one, of course. So that's kind of a little introduction as to how I met you, some of my observations that I've seen. But let's start from the beginning. I know that you are a San Gabriel Valley native. Do you want to talk a bit about your youth, your childhood, and where it all began?
Sure. Well, yeah, I did grow up, was born in the San Gabriel Valley, but actually in San Dimas. I was born in San Dimas, and my family moved to Monterey Park, I think, before I was 1. So I was just born there, and I grew up in Monterey Park. And most of my childhood memories are from there. I have, my family history is a little complicated. I'll say I have 5 brothers, 2 sisters. I'm the oldest, youngest, middle, and only child, depending on how you look at it. It
was a mixed family, father and mother.
Yeah, so I'm the only offspring from my mom and dad, and all my other siblings are half.
Okay.
And some I grew up with, some I didn't, some I know, some I didn't know. And where I fall in there depends on, the way you look at my family. But so I grew up primarily with a brother, an older brother in Monterey Park. Spent my childhood there, and most of it was involved, in sports, outdoor activities, scouting, and I went to Marquette High School.
So Monterey Park, you grew up there probably in the 80s, I would think.
Yeah.
And you grew up, you're of mixed ancestry.
Yes.
And you're part Japanese, part Caucasian, mostly Japanese.
Yes.
And growing up in Monterey Park in the 80s, I happen to remember from living there at that time myself, it was a time of great transition. It was transitioning from, actually there was a very solid, stable Japanese population that had been there, I would guess, for decades, but transitioning into an influx of Chinese, and a lot of the Caucasians were, I don't know if they were so much replaced or if it was just that there was such an influx of new immigrants that the percentages of any one ethnic group, it was changing considerably. So how was it for you as you were growing up? Because you were not an immigrant. You were, born here. but you were probably mixing with a lot of the new immigrants.
Yes. My mom was born in Japan to a U.S. Army soldier and a Japanese native. So she came over here when she was 4. My father is Japanese but was born in Korea. And I think growing up, my experience was more, I would say, American. I think my parents both wanted me to grow up as an American, as best they knew what that meant. So they put me in what they felt were American activities, for kids, scouting and sports. And I realized a lot of my friends at that time were doing Japanese or Chinese school every weekend. That was pretty common with the people I knew or saw growing up. And I didn't do that. And I think I recall that there was a larger Japanese population there, and I only know that they left. I think they went to like the South Bay area, Gardena, Torrance, and whatnot, but they were leaving as I was growing up. The population of Japanese, I think around Highland, the hills of Monterey Park. I think that's where they typically were, but yeah.
You didn't attend any foreign language schools or Japanese school, Chinese school, as you just said. But a lot of your friends were?
I would say the majority of them, yes. Yes.
Did you feel left out or?
No, because they always complained about, having to go to school on the weekend. And I was playing sports and I was, going camping. And when we got back to school after a weekend, these are my stories that I had to share. And they were, not doing those things. So I always felt that it was a good thing. Although I wish I spoke a different language now.
Looking back, you wish that had happened, but at the time, you were probably the envy of the neighborhood, right? You didn't have to go to school on Saturdays,
right? I mean, my parents both speak fluent Japanese, but they chose not to speak it at home to me.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. And
their English was pretty good.
I think my mom's English is almost like a native speaker. Yes, coming here at 4. My father, he has an accent that I can hear, but he speaks well enough.
Mm-hmm. And so you would spend your weekends and hours after school as a Boy Scout and as a member of sports teams. And I seem to remember, you were a swimmer. I remember that.
Yes.
And baseball, you were, from what I can tell, a pretty good baseball player.
I think so. At a young age, I just remember people being happy that I could hit the ball.
Well, I can tell you from experience, I could never hit the ball. So that's a skill.
Well, what I learned later on is that why I was driven to do well at that was after hitting my first home run, I think in T-ball, and you round the bases and you're coming home, all these people are so happy, and they're happy of something that you did, and I look back on that and I think, okay, aside from that, where else do you get that experience?
So it was applause. Or did you feel good that you had done something for them?
I think all of that. I was happy. I was being recognized. People were happy. People were clapping. It was just this really overwhelming feeling. And if I'm hitting 3-4 home runs a game, and people are doing this, like, it just felt incredible.
But I know you're not a person who you don't like to necessarily stand out, or you don't like to bring undue attention to yourself. You are modest and humble. But at that time, were you feeling this acclaim really made you feel good?
I have mixed feelings about it because I think I think that was a place where I did receive positive feedback from my mom and my parents, about my mom and my brother. And looking back, that wasn't something that I regularly got, and things sort of didn't really matter so much. We can get down to the dysfunction of my family, but now I know that the reason that there was such a reaction to that was because in some way my mom was receiving the same accolade. Right?
So she could brag to her friends,
or other parents,
she could just shine in the glory.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't so much about what I was doing, but she relished that she was getting some attention from that.
Well, as a child, what were the things that were important to you? What did you enjoy? You would have school, you would have extra, after school activities, you would have family life. Where did you find your joy? What was important to you then? And looking back now, what were the really critical things that were affecting you?
I wouldn't say school was a joy for me. I knew that I had skipped a grade growing up, and only maybe a few years ago did my sister tell me that they wanted to advance me 2 grades, and my mom was going to do that. And my sister talked my mom out of that, saying that it would be too much for me, that she didn't think that was a good idea. I had no idea about that, but I know that they advanced me 1 grade, and that seems all well. But the reason that I think that was because my brother was, who was 8 years older than me, extremely harsh on me, and pushed me to learn and do things at a very fast rate growing up. And so I'm pretty sure by the time they wanted me to go to preschool that I had known like all the state capitals, all the states, and my times tables to 12 as a, 6-year-old. And, no one really knows what I went through to get there. They just see this child arriving at school and think like, okay, all this stuff. But yeah, so
they didn't know that it, there was a cost to it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And I didn't know either, because any child going through just thinks that things are normal, right? So,
as a child, you don't know,
right?
But you can feel. And did you feel that there was something not right?
Oh yes, for sure. I mean that's just the academic part. My brother wanted me to be so much. And he had his own difficulties growing up as well, and while I understand the reasons why he was the way he was with me, I don't excuse it, right? So school was, in my opinion, very easy. Like I just got things, and I found myself bored often. The pace was not,
At what age were you advanced 1 grade?
I believe 1st grade. Yeah.
So you were maybe one of the youngest kids in the class.
Always, yeah. So
always.
Going through all of elementary school and high school, I was always the youngest, either a year or more.
And that's difficult because of the just the maturation process.
Yes, and I whenever that would be discovered, as kids are mean, and they try to highlight or point out things that are different, I always had to sort of prove that I belonged there, as a younger person.
So it could present itself a couple of ways. One is you feel very insecure because you may be advanced intellectually, but in other ways you don't fit in just because of the age difference.
Right.
And so you may feel insecure, or you may feel in a way superior, but did those things mix up in you or at all?
No, I just didn't want people to know and ask that question because there's always going to be so many more follow-up questions to that. And I just didn't like that. I just wanted to like nobody to know. And so I was pretty fortunate also that my growth was not unusual, like for being advanced. Like I wasn't smaller. I just looked like
Normal.
Yeah. In high school though, I thought, wow, what could I have done if I were a year more mature physically with sport?
So what was it that you took pleasure in? I know, for instance, you told me the other day you don't like to read you didn't like to be forced to read books in high school or in school. So if you were forced to, you may have read it, but it didn't mean anything to you. But what was exciting to you, or what was fun to you?
I would say sport. Sport was always the most fun, and competition. And again, this goes back to feeling like I was doing something that mattered to somebody, and sport was the easiest way to feel that, I think. Also, there were friends and stuff, but I looked forward to playing sports. I looked forward to being around teammates, friends in Boy Scouts. I looked forward to being in the outdoors, those sorts of things.
Which sports did you play?
I played baseball from age 6, basketball I think same age, bowling. I did soccer for one season, but it wasn't really for me. But I know that my mom was like really trying to have me do so much, and my schedule was basically filled, 7 days a week. I was doing something.
So she would, was she a Tiger mom?
No, not at all. And actually, I don't think that she realized skill that I had in sport. I'm pretty sure she didn't. Did
she attend? You said she could bask in the glory if you hit. Did she go to your games?
She did, yeah. When I was younger, not so much in high school, but she did.
But you played all the way through high school?
I did. I stopped playing baseball in high school, and I did cross country and I swam in addition to basketball.
And you were a Boy Scout, so I assume you started as a Cub Scout?
Yes, I did. Cub Scouts and Webelow, and then Boy Scout. Yeah.
Okay. And was that something of importance to you?
Yes. I would say more for like the family feeling. I was really close to people in the Scouts, and my Scoutmaster was, a very warm and kind person. And our troop was very active. So I only learned that other Boy Scout troops, their experience is not the same. They didn't go on as many camping trips or canoe trips or to Hawaii or Philmont in New Mexico. Like we were really active and we did a lot of outdoor stuff. So I really enjoyed that.
Did you have pretty much the same group starting at, so Webelow is the beginning level?
I think it's Cub Scout or Tiger Cub Scout, Webelow, and then Boy Scout. Okay.
And were you mostly the same group?
I don't really remember the people from before Boy Scouts, but in Boy Scouts, it's mostly the same group. I mean, kids come and go, but there's a core group there.
And was that through high school?
Yes, through high school.
And I know Boy Scouts have to do a project, right? Something.
If they're going to go for Eagle, it culminates with an Eagle project. Yeah,
that's right. And you did a project. What was your project?
There was a woman, an elderly woman in Montebello who had lost her husband, and her landscaping had become a fire hazard, and the city was going to fine her or charge her to get rid of all this. And we heard of it because one of the parents was working for the city of Montebello. So she proposed this idea to help her with her landscaping, and so we arranged people donated tools. I organized the people to come, and we took care of her whole house, her whole landscaping issue, which was maybe 2 days, 8 hours of work each day.
Mm-hmm. So after all these years, who do you find are your closest friends that have remained with you?
Well, Danny, I think I've mentioned Danny to you. Danny has really been an impact in my life. And I still talk to him, even though we don't hang out much. He's a new father, and he's a teacher now. But Danny used to live a block away from me, and we've been friends since I think 3rd grade. And if I can share a story about Danny, so this is a story I have in my office, as you've seen, a ticket to a basketball game. And so I've known Danny since 3rd grade, and he was so moved. I guess in 7th grade, I invited him to go to an NBA basketball game, and it was nothing special about this game. And I didn't know the impact it had made on him, but he remembers feeling that now he's an American. Now he's doing what he sees American kids do, which is go to like baseball or basketball game. So it's his first time he'd ever been to an NBA game, and that was in 1991. And 17 years later, in 2008, he's retelling the story in front of a large audience, and he's saying how much this impacted him. And he went home that night from the game, looked at the ticket, and said that, one day he's going to give this back to me. And in front of a room of like 350 people, 17 years later, he pulls out the ticket.
Wow.
And there's this collective gasp, and tears just coming down from everybody. And I was so moved, and I had no idea that this game had meant so much to him.
Right. Wow.
So that's one person. Yeah.
What was the event that he pulled it out?
That was, so I was married before. That was a wedding.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Wow. That is really amazing. Imagine the impact, a person has on other people's lives, and you don't even know necessarily.
Right.
And I'm sure there've been many of those situations for you.
Yeah. I mean, well, he said that he was being made fun of, for his lunch, Chinese lunch,
Right.
foods. And I never got any of that kind of teasing myself, but and I was oblivious to other people getting it. But he said to me that I never made him feel like a foreigner. I never made him feel embarrassed, and I just really had no idea.
How much at that time as you were growing up, how much did you feel that there were foreigners and there were non-foreigners, or did you ever feel that?
I don't think so, because Monterey Park, even at that time, there was a lot of Asians there, a lot. And, I would say the majority of the people I went to elementary school with were Asian, large majority, maybe like 65, 70% Asian. And then in high school, a lot were Asian. And it just never was an issue for me personally, or that I saw with my friends, being Asian. I know that my friends experienced that, a lot of things related to being an immigrant, but I myself didn't really experience that.
I'm interested in what you were like at that age, grade school, junior high, high school. I know you today as a very empathetic person, a very, as I said, thoughtful, really well thought out, speaker and thinker. Do you feel the you that you are today is any different than what you were at that time?
In that sense, not really. I think I've always been like that. Empathetic and feeling, I have been told my whole life that I'm very sensitive.
Yeah, sensitive, I would say.
And
soft-spoken.
As a younger person, I used to feel like that was not a good thing, but as an adult, I feel like it's a strength, maybe when I was in high school and someone said, "Oh, you're really sensitive," I would feel maybe some shame, like thinking that that's a bad thing. But I don't think that anymore.
I went to high school with a person who remains a very close friend of mine today. And I always thought of him as very sensitive, well-spoken, the same traits that I would describe for you, I would describe for him. But what I found is that he happened to have been one of the most respected and probably, not a member of a clique, but a person that could and did fit in very well with everybody, and was a genuine person to be respected. Do you feel any of that in yourself?
Yes, I would say I can get along with most people, but there was a shift in my adult life where I went from wanting, or maybe even worse, needing to be well liked by people to not caring. and you were here in my life for that shift, and that's not a move, I think, in a bad direction. I think it was healthy for me, right? So I may have been that person before where it mattered to me to be liked by everybody, and now, while that is good or feels good, I'm not negatively impacted if someone doesn't like me. And I'll say, that frees me up to be 100% who I am. I'm who I am, and I'm not so much concerned, does this person like me or this person? And I'm okay that maybe this person doesn't like me, and that doesn't affect me. So,
well, one word that I've learned from you and applies to you is authentic. And do you feel the you as a high school, junior high, elementary school person, of course you're in the process of developing, but do you feel that you were authentic at that time?
At times, but then it got, I don't know if it was changed by me or in other outside influences, but certainly I can sort of see where how other people saw me mattered more. I can see that shift, right? And that probably started before high school, but I definitely see it in high school. I have my own taste in music and clothes and hobbies, and I can remember in high school, if you're into something and it's sort of against the crowd, you are aware of it right away. And I wanted to fit in high school, so I went with what my friends at the time were listening to or what they were into, and it wasn't necessarily always what I was into, but I didn't want to stand out then.
So what was it like in the 80s? Who did you listen to?
Well, I remember that, before I went to high school, I was into Metallica and Guns N' Roses and that genre of music. And there's a certain dress that goes with that. And when I got to high school, dressing like that, I was very much in the minority. And I felt that immediately. And I was like, okay, I think I want to dress like how everyone else is dressing.
So I would think those would be called hard rock.
Maybe, but I think at the time the dress style was called like grunge, and that originated in Seattle.
Right, sure. That was Nirvana and Pearl Jam and
yes. So I listened to those groups, and I think the friends that I started to have and make in high school were not so much into those groups. So rather than stick to the music that I like or the dress that I like, I really found myself conforming.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when people are telling you and you feel that there's something wrong with you being sensitive, or I found myself maybe trying to harden myself or my personality, and so people wouldn't say that, and maybe that's a way of not being authentic, right, to myself.
Although I think it's a fairly universal experience for any high schooler to just, no matter how popular they may seem to be, to still have this feeling of not knowing if you fit in, where you fit in, perhaps feeling awkward. I think that's pretty universal, isn't it?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah. So what you were experiencing was pretty much something that could be expected of a young person.
Right. But now as I work with people and adults, I think that I can recognize when people are genuine and authentic and when they're not. And I think that's difficult if you don't come out of that as an adult. If you are living a life that is not authentic to who you really are, that's tough. That's very tough.
Yeah, well, that's a whole interesting area of conversation, and I'm not sure if you want to stick with your younger age or get into some of what came after.
Well, we talked earlier before the show whether or not I wanted to go into this topic with my brother. Mm-hmm. It's difficult, but I think it's important to know me, to know why I went the route that I did in my career as an adult. My brother was very tough on me. He himself had a difficult childhood, which makes it understandable, but not an excuse. And part of his style was very strict and very disciplined in terms of punishment. And as a young person, I don't know what is right. I don't know what is different. I just think that, I felt that this was wrong. This was not right.
Was he playing a father role?
My parents divorced before I was even one, I think. And my father was always around. I saw him every other weekend. So he knew that my father was still in the picture, but.
And this was not his father.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. But I think my mom maybe put too much of responsibility on my brother to help raise me. And I think my brother also had this idea that he was going to make me successful.
Did your mother have to be out of the house working, or was she around?
Oh yeah. So she was a single mom. She worked, she was a paralegal, and she was gone, early in the morning, and she got home 6-7 o'clock at night every night.
And your brother was 8 years older than you.
Right.
So was it middle school primarily or elementary school primarily that you were going through these experiences with him?
Mostly, all my childhood through early high school, I would say, this whole time.
He was always at home.
Always at home, yes. And that was a very, very difficult time in my life. Very difficult. I would go, to my dad's every other weekend, and despite my father asking me, "Are things okay?" and my knowing that they weren't, I would always respond with that they are. And I think I was able enough to recognize that if I told him and he was not able to extract me from the situation, things were just going to get worse. So I didn't really say anything.
That the knowledge that he knew and maybe was talking to your mother,
yeah,
and then nothing happened, that it would just make things worse.
Right. So anyways, I brought that up to sort of give the background on as to why I chose the career that I did. I remember at 14 years old, I'll back up. The 80s is the movies in the 80s are really similar in the ones that I would watch. And let's say like Rocky or other martial arts movies. And the common theme that I saw over and over again was this person overcame their situation through training themselves and their bodies. They're physically training themselves. And in the end, they always won. They always overcame. And if you just discipline yourself and train yourself hard, even to the point of, just beating yourself up, that you were going to come out on top. That was the message that I absorbed. And I remember saying, okay, I'm going to do something about my situation. I asked my dad for a weight set at age 14, having no idea what I was doing other than what I would see on the movies. And I literally would copy what I see them, working out in a training montage or whatever. And I would do this every day, with this rage, really, that I needed to become physically strong enough to overcome my oppressor. And that's what I did. And I remember I was 16 years old, so maybe a year and a half of doing that. I was 16 years old in high school, and I looked in the mirror and I knew that I was bigger than my brother. I was 100% sure. And now what I know about strength, size, what you see is not really always equate with what that person is. So I was probably stronger than him at 14, but I just didn't know because I never really fought with him physically. And I just decided I'm just going to stand up to him. I'm not going to take this anymore. And I remember picking a fight over like taking pot pie out of the oven. And he was really shocked because, here I am now standing up to him. And we fought that day. We fought, to say that we fought is just that I sort of beat him up. And I remember having him in a headlock. And as soon as I heard him struggling to breathe, tears just started pouring out of my eyes. And I let him go, and we had never fought again after that. And he never tried to force me again after that.
So what you did accomplished a purpose.
It did, yes. Yeah. I was instantly free in that moment, instantly.
And what lesson do you take from that?
Well, that shaped how I thought and how I went about life for so long, right?
But that was a physical altercation.
It was, but I had to make a choice that like nobody was going to save me. Nobody was like, people know, or at least I thought, what was going on, and they were okay with it. And so, I just had to make this decision for myself that I was going to find a way. I was going to find a way to get out of this myself.
And in that case, it was through physical means, but do you believe that you also learned that you could do it other ways as well?
Well, the other ways were even harder because the physical part is a small portion, and people who can have that kind of control and effect over you, they can still do it without being physical. And namely, that means in my case was my love for my brother, right? So if they can't control you physically, they know that you love them and you will do things because of your love for them. And that took a lot longer to realize and to overcome that.
Well, how did that affect your relationship with him?
With my brother?
Yeah.
Well, after I had that fight with him, I don't think it was really, it obviously was not the same anymore. We weren't spending time together. And so that was at 16 years old. I left for the Army at 17. I turned 17 February of my senior year in high school, and I left for the Army in June.
So things changed anyway.
They did, and looking back, I think that I specifically chose to enter the military one, for money for college, but two, that it was an instant way that I could be out of the house and gone.
At this point today, how do you describe your relationship with your brother?
Sadly, non-existent. And this is not by choice. I haven't said to him, I don't want to talk to you. In fact, I have healed from that. He has apologized both in person, verbally, and in writing. And I think that he struggles greatly to forgive himself. And I think that's where the difficulty comes in being able to have a relationship with me. He doesn't believe that I have fully forgiven him. That's what I think.
What's remarkable is that you had to free yourself from a certain kind of oppression, which you did, and you did it physically. And many, many years later in your life, you had to free yourself again from oppression.
Yes.
And not in a physical way, but an oppression just as fierce and maybe even worse.
Right.
And that is a fascinating story as well. Should we take a break now?
Sure.
Okay.
We'll come back.
Yeah.
The legal process can be intimidating. You don't know where to start and you're unsure of what to expect. The attorneys and staff at the law offices of Scott Warmoth have been serving the San Gabriel Valley for over 35 years, helping people just like you navigate through the legal process and ensuring you're treated fairly. You can find them at law888.com or call 626-282-6868. That's 626-282-6868.
Okay, so back now, talking with Russell. You've joined the Army.
Yes.
And you actually did it for a couple of reasons that you identified. One was to escape, and one was to improve yourself.
Right.
And how long had you been thinking about going into the Army, and how much did each of those two thoughts influence you? Well,
the fight with my brother was in my senior year, so I think 16. And so this would have been pretty close to that, where I remember asking my mom about college. And, you know, I would see in movies and TV that when the kids are ready for college, that the parents have this college fund ready. And I remember asking my mom, and she looked at me and she's like, no, there's no money. You're going to have to work on your own. And I said, okay. And it was that moment where I was like, what am I going to do? And I don't know how I heard or saw about the military helping with college. And I remember I was doing all this research on my own. I spoke to all 4 branches, and I decided on the Army because they had the most money for college and they're the largest. So upward mobility was the fastest. Those were the 2 reasons. And I was speaking with the recruiter, and when they found out that I was 17, they said, oh, well, we need your mom's permission because you're a minor. So, okay. So I told my mom, I said, Mom, my friends are going to come over for dinner, okay? And she's like, okay. And I remember they were walking up to our house in their dress uniform, and my mom, you know, she had no idea that I had been researching or talking to anybody. And here are these 2 Army recruiters sitting at the dinner table, and she knows who I am. So she's not shocked, but she's surprised. And at the end of that dinner, she was okay with it, and she eventually would sign for me to go. And I left very soon after I turned 17 for the military.
Was she? Was there emotion on her part when she saw you leave, and how did you feel? How much emotion?
Yeah, so I remember specifically not wanting to break down and cry, right? And so the recruiter, I can sense, you know, I'm very sensitive, so I can feel things from people, and I can sense that the recruiter could feel, or like he's done this before, right? Taking young men and women from their families. So I could sense that he was waiting this moment. And my mom, I was putting the things in the car, And when you leave for basic training, you only take a small bag. You don't take, you're not moving because everything's going to be there for you. So you just have this small bag. And I remember putting it in the car, in the recruiter's car, and my mom at the door, and everything is fine. And then I remember I had to go back for something, and she just like started breaking down, crying. And she had wrote me a letter, and I was reading it on the car, and I was crying. And but my brother didn't say goodbye. So I remember that. And,
Was he there?
He was there, yeah, but he didn't say goodbye.
Sometimes it's difficult. I mean, I myself find in like very emotional moments, I almost need to withdraw rather than confront it. Mm-hmm. Is it possible any of that was at play, or?
I mean, that would be a positive thing.
Yeah.
I think he just didn't know how to handle. Now here's someone that he, was above in many ways. And now I'm a very different person. So I don't know.
Yeah.
And at that point he had not apologized. I had not confronted him with all that stuff. So it was not like it was later on.
Was it kind of tense around the home? Something in the air, though.
Not. I mean, I grew up in very, very, very stressed and tensed. So, going to basic training and have someone yell at me and try to frighten me was nothing. Like even my drill sergeants could see that in me also, and later on my sergeants. Like, I didn't gain discipline in the military. I was already who I was because I'd gone through a lot.
What was it like? Where did you go for your basic training?
I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky, which is unusual in a couple of ways. One, that it's a all-male base. So it's an all-male base, and it's a combat base, and it's also, almost like in the middle of nowhere in Kentucky.
Is that right? So what does it mean, a combat base?
Oh, okay. So combat base. So combat arms, I don't know about now, but combat arms, meaning that type of military occupational specialty, has been reserved only for males. Like the military didn't allow females to serve in combat arms roles. I think that may have changed. I think it has, but when I was in, that's what it was. So Fort Knox is an armored division base. There's tanks and combat troops there. So the only female on the base would be like support administrative personnel.
What was your position in the Army? What did you go in to learn? What was your status? What was I don't know how to describe it. I was never in the military, but
so you have to take a test, and I don't remember taking the test. It's the ASVAB, and you need to score 70 to qualify, and 110 is to qualify to become an officer. And depending on what you score is opens up more jobs for you, right? So the test is out of 140 points. 70, you can become an infantry, 110 for officer. The recruiters don't tell you, what jobs are available because they're just trying to meet their quota every month. So when I went to sign up, they said, well, these are the jobs that we have for you. MP, military police, infantry, cook, or mechanic, and choose. And I was like, wow, okay, I don't want to be any of those. I guess I'll be a mechanic. So, and on that test, I scored 127. So every job would have been available to me.
Oh, wow. I wonder why they limited it.
Oh, because they have to meet their quota, the recruiters. Oh. So if he said to me, these are the jobs that are available now, but if you want to wait, you can have, whatever job.
I see.
That's what I learned later on.
Okay.
But he didn't say that to me.
So you knew at the time you signed up, you were going, and I know you became a mechanic.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's what you knew you were going off to study or to practice.
Yes. Yes.
So what was the military like? How long were you in Fort Knox, and where did you go after that?
So the military was, in my opinion, wonderful. wonderful. I was away from home, which was a huge relief. I was physically fit, and so the physical rigors of basic training was a breeze. The stress that they try to impose on recruits didn't really faze me. And I did well. I did well in basic training, and I enjoyed the physical part. I enjoyed learning new stuff, and so that was at Fort Knox. Oh, it was actually the first time that I realized that I was a minority in this country. The first time.
Okay, so how did that come down?
Well, in Monterey Park, there's so many Asians, and I said I grew up with a lot of Asians. I was one of two in maybe 250 soldiers and staff, one of two, and the other one was a Filipino.
Wow. So that is only 2%. You said it out of 100?
250.
250. Wow. So less than 1%.
Yes. And I met individuals in basic training, black men who had never seen a white person in person in their life, and white people who had never seen a black person in their life. I didn't even know that was a thing.
That's incredible.
So obviously they had never seen an Asian person in their life in person, and all the stereotypes of what an Asian is in their mind was, at the forefront.
Comes out. Yeah. And I suppose to some extent that was for you too. You had dealt with Caucasians. Did you deal with many blacks, for instance, in Monterey Park growing up?
One.
So all that was a new experience for you too.
Yes.
But gathering together these various groups, but you were still such a very minor percentage of what everybody else was. So did you feel in any way that you were mistreated or biased, prejudiced, any of these kinds of feelings? In ways that benefited me, a lot of people assumed that I knew martial arts. They really thought that. So they were afraid of you.
Yeah. And I was on the upper end of people in terms of their physical fitness, because they tested people, push-ups, run, and all that, and I was on the very high end. So people didn't really mess with me.
Well, I know even some of our guests have talked about how eye-opening it was to go from Monterey Park to UC Santa Cruz, and all of a sudden see that this part of America they had never seen before, which was where they were a very obvious minority. So how did, in some ways you said it benefited you, but were there any negative feelings or repercussions? Or
no, I don't think so. I mean, my last name that was on my uniform, Fukui, was mispronounced a lot, and intentionally by the drill sergeants.
Oh, I can understand. Very obvious. Yeah.
And but their job is to stress people out as much as possible, because nothing will compare to war. And I understand that now. So their job is to say, if you can't handle this stress, you don't belong in the military. And so, they would have their tactics and whatnot, but
I can understand that too. They just need to get you to the point where you are with the game, mm-hmm. and you will follow the rules.
Right.
And that moment that you're on a battlefield and you may need to protect people, you're not going to, do your own thing.
Yes.
Yes. I can see how important that is.
Yeah. And, the Boy Scouts is not strictly like military structure, but there is like, different ranks and people have responsibilities. So that was familiar to me. Yeah. And I was a squad leader in basic training, which doesn't really mean much, but drill sergeants like to fire them, rapidly. And I was the only one to last the entire, 8 or 9 weeks of basic training. And they wanted to switch me out in the parade because I was shorter. They wanted the squad leader to be, from height going down. But my drill sergeant didn't let them do that because I had been there the whole time.
Well, I know from our own conversations that you have said the best leaders, the most influential leaders in your life, I believe this is a correct statement, were those in the military.
Yes. And my scoutmaster. Yes.
So I know how these leaders have been influential to you, and I think it'll be a very interesting discussion that we can have in our next session. This has been a pretty thorough understanding of how you developed, what influenced you growing up and getting into the military. And the next podcast, I think we can really dig into some of the more current contemporary issues that you'd like to talk about.
Sure. Yeah, I'm excited.
So you're the one that's always taken the lead. I don't even know how to close out the show.
Oh, well, it's nice to talk to our listeners. It's hard because they're not here. So
I think it's really a good idea that we're doing what we're doing so that our listeners do get to know more about us. And I'm just really, really anxious for people, as they reach out to us, really anxious and interested in talking with them or communicating with them. And I hope that this encourages more of it.
Sure. Yeah. And, for those who are fans of the show or listening this whole time and wondering, who I am, who's Russell, who's this guy, I hope you get some more insight into that question.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks for checking out another episode of the SGV Master Key. You can find the full back catalog of the SGV Master Key at sgvmasterkey.com and wherever you get your podcasts. This show was produced and edited by Russell Mano and Victoria Allers of Kind Monster Productions. Thanks again for listening or watching. We'll see you again real soon in the next episode.
Nice mother. No, kind mother.